Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, Egypt, the election, and the state of journalism there. Journalism that's gone to the dogs. What's with all the fact-free reporting about North Korea, Thailand, and Turkey, two countries where the authorities are making life difficult for reporters? And whose webcam is it anyway? Yours or the NSA's? Whatever side of the political divide Egyptians find themselves on, whether they were for the interim military government or the Muslim Brotherhood, whether they thought an election in which the Brotherhood was banned was legitimate or not, on this much Egyptians could agree. The vote had all the drama of the elections that kept Hosni Mubarak in power for decades. There wasn't any. During the campaign, media outlets, and not just those owned by the state, provided a barrage of stories, images, and music videos favoring the general now known as President, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, better known to his supporters as the savior of the nation. When low turnout at the polls threatened to undermine that message, media outlets urged the public to get out and vote. Critical voices have been hushed. This past week, Egypt's top TV satirist Bassem Youssef announced that his show would stay off the air indefinitely. The Interior Ministry revealed plans for a new surveillance system to monitor social media sites for political dissent. And then there's the trial of this network's journalists accused of links to the Muslim Brotherhood, a story that is just one angle in a wider geopolitical standoff between Egypt and Qatar. In fact, Egypt is a story, a country, in which the security narrative has trumped freedom of expression. Our starting point this week is Cairo.
In the visual media, it remained the main stronghold of Sisi mania. There was kind of like a combination between circus, a soap opera, comedy, and a teen movie all rolled into one. Egypt at the moment doesn't have a democracy. It has a democracy.
And that was rather apparent when the election results rolled in and journalists, even on some privately owned, ostensibly independent channels, started celebrating.
We've been trying very much to cheer a particular candidate, in this case General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and try to paint a picture of his overwhelming popularity. So really the media has been, in a way, mobilizing people. Rallying people behind this particular candidate, but there was also a lot of moving away from reality and misrepresenting the facts.
But for the most part, most of the Egyptian media tried to push people to come out and vote. So the real barometer of the success of the elections was the voter turnout. And so every single station, irrespective of political leaning or ownership, most of them tried to rally people to come out into the streets. So this was the real key push for most of the stations.
Egyptian media has been practicing to cover elections now for 3 years or so in a different way from the past, in an embryonic democracy. They done relatively well. There were some excesses or some bias in some private TV channels, but the Egyptian state media, they tried as much as possible to adhere to the neutrality and to be balanced.
If state-owned TV really did try to do that, there are plenty of examples of where they failed. That sounds like a new low watermark for critical journalism in Egypt, but in some ways the news media may be rediscovering their voices. Take Ibrahim Issa. Once a thorn in the side of the Mubarak regime, he opposed the Muslim Brotherhood government of Mohamed Morsi. And then went all in on the coup that brought the interim military government to power. But when Issa took part in one of el-Sisi's rare campaign interviews, he showed some signs of journalistic life.
Issa was very gentle with him until Sisi started talking about Egyptians have to understand that the army knows best and so on. So Issa sort of turned on him and said the army should be under civilian supervision and it's there to serve the people, not the other way around. So I see this in the mainstream media as a promising sign that, especially with the relatively low mandate that Sisi has, that it will embolden the media to become more critical of his presidency.
Most discussions of the Egyptian media seem to imply that all of the stations and all the newspapers support Sisi wholeheartedly. That is not necessarily the case. In fact, primarily in print media, there are some newspapers that have taken Sisi to task. One of them being Shurouk newspaper, an independent publication that hosts articles by columnists who are very critical of Sisi, of the coup, and some supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, as well as Mada Masr, an online publication that is extremely independent. Most of those have continued to function, but have not flourished. They've seen their circulation decline as the public becomes less and less interested in critical journalism.
Egyptians embraced Al Jazeera's critical journalism during the Arab Spring. The network's coverage, primarily on its Arabic news channel, was credited by protesters and blamed by the Mubarak regime for playing a central role in the revolution. 3 years later, Al Jazeera is seen by many Egyptians, journalists included, as biased in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood. 4 Al Jazeera employees are in prison accused of colluding with the banned movement. Although its evidence is unconvincing, the prosecution wants 3 Al Jazeera English defendants jailed for 15 years in a case journalists and media rights groups the world over have condemned as sham justice. When Tahrir Square was the story, much of what Al Jazeera and other networks broadcast came via social media. Through the images they sent and the news they broke over the net, Egyptians drove the coverage. This past week, Al Watan, a paper based in Cairo, published leaked documents indicating the government plans to monitor social media on a mass scale. The Interior Minister confirmed that, but insisted the new measure will not affect freedom of opinion and expression.
Just having this under surveillance by the security forces makes a lot of people reluctant to voice their opinions openly and freely because they know that they're being watched. That in itself curbs freedom of expression and freedom of the press, and also curbs the freedom which we have been witnessing online, which has been a trigger for political mobilization as well as a reflection of it.
Don't forget also something very important. The Muslim Brothers in their social media now, people want to hijack this new democracy that is being built, because during the Muslim Brothers there was no democracy. Believe me, there was no democracy. So give Sisi a chance. And about the social media, people in Egypt, here or outside, they will watch what is happening, and if there is any transgression against all these high-valued principles, you will see the result.
As for not infringing on civil liberties, that's kind of a joke. I mean, even in societies like the United States, the snooping by security services has been a great infringement on civil liberties. So in Egypt, Big Brother can really hurt activists and hurt journalists. I don't buy the justification that snooping is motivated solely by security concerns. If I'm a terrorist and want to plan an attack, they're not going to be advertising it on Facebook. So the real purpose is not state security, but the insecurity of the state.
Our Global Village voices now on the election, the coverage, and the prospects for Egyptian journalism.
Freedom of expression has suffered greatly over the course of modern Egyptian history, but I'd certainly say that this period vies for the worst time in the last few years. Apart from arrests and detentions of journalists and activists, we've had graffiti has been criminalized, as has the so-called dishonoring of the flag. Even the fans of pro-revolution musicians have been targeted. The mainstream media as well has given up not only any principles it once claimed to stand for, but also all objectivity. And whether it's for imagined gain or because they lack the vision to see other options, I don't know.
The Egyptian media will continue to blow horns and enjoy the security of the regime that supports them to say whatever they want, and it's basically them saying whatever the regime wants. It's a mutual relationship between the regime and the media, and it's not a good relationship.
Time now for Listening Post News Bites. 2 weeks into Thailand's latest military government, and one of the journalists arrested is now telling a story of psychological warfare against him that he calls surreal. Pravith Rochanapruth of The Nation newspaper was released May 31st. He'd been held for 6 days. He was arrested after tweeting just before a news conference in Bangkok, "On my way to see the new dictator of Thailand, hopefully the last." He says he was taken to a military camp along with officials of the ousted government. Thai police are now reportedly posing as journalists. This video was posted by the Matichon newspaper. It shows a man wearing press accreditation and the green armband of the Thai Journalists Association, the TJA, helping police apprehend a protester. The TJA said the tactic would have an immense impact on the safety and credibility of the Thai media. Journalists in Turkey covering the anniversary of the Gezi Park protests have been in for some rough treatment. Ivan Watson of CNN was reporting live from Taksim Square May 31st when this happened.
Are you journalists? I think I'm getting... We're being detained right now.
Watson later said on Twitter he was released after less than an hour and that the police apologized for kicking him. But the Prime Minister, Tayyip Erdogan, was unapologetic. According to Agence France Presse, Erdogan told members of his AK party that Watson was a lackey who had been caught red-handed and that CNN doesn't care about a free press. They are assigned to work like spies. The International Federation of Journalists, based in Brussels, the headquarters of the EU that Turkey still wants to join, reports that a number of journalists have been beaten by police in Istanbul. A blogger in Singapore has managed to kickstart his legal case against the country's prime minister by using crowdfunding to pay his legal bills. Roy Nguyen Yi Ling has a day job as a healthcare worker, but he doubles as a political blogger, writing about the ruling People's Action Party on his blog, The Heart Truths. A post on May 15th landed him in trouble after he wrote of possible government corruption. Lawyers for the Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong, called his post defamatory and said that the blogger's subsequent apology and his offer of about $4,000 in damages were both unsatisfactory, which meant that the case was headed to court. Nguyen then turned to his readers to fund his case, posting an appeal for more than $50,000. He met that target within just 4 days, and the money is still pouring in. Nguyen told the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists the Singapore government has governed using a blanket cover of fear and silence. Ironically, I am grateful that this has happened to allow more Singaporeans to awaken. A New York Times journalist who published U.S. government secrets is one step closer to prison now that the country's highest court has decided it will not hear his appeal against a ruling that he must reveal the name of a confidential source. The Supreme Court's ruling June 2nd means that James Rison will have to testify in the criminal trial against a former CIA employee, Jeffrey Sterling, who was accused of blowing the whistle on a secret program to provide Iran with faulty plans for a nuclear bomb. That information ended up in Rison's book, State of War, The Secret History of the CIA and the Bush administration. Rison's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he said that he would rather go to jail than reveal the identity of his source. The decision comes just days after the U.S. House of Representatives voted in favor of an amendment that would protect journalists from federal demands to divulge their sources. But it's still a long way from becoming American law. A similar amendment in 2009, a media shield law for journalists, was approved in the House of Representatives, but later was shot down in the Senate. If you were to try to conjure up a mental picture of North Korea based on what you see in the news media, you'd have a country where this, Kim Il-sung Square, is a popular hangout, where Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un's hairstyle makes him a fashion icon, and where a lack of loyalty might get you devoured by a pack of hungry dogs. None of those things are actually true. In the news industry, reports on North Korea are often inaccurate and unverifiable. Why would news outlets that usually fact-check stories just eat up rumors from Pyongyang and then spit them out as headlines? Is that a natural symptom of reporting on a hermit kingdom that won't let them in? Or are there larger agendas at play? Meenakshi Ravi now on why so many news outlets run bizarre stories about North Korea.
North Korea is like a black box. We don't really see what's going on there.
To the outside world, it's just a crazy crackpot sort of place.
Reclusive North Korea.
Full of things that go bang and boom.
Even the television announcer is emotional.
When the foreign media found a sensational story, they jump on that and reinforce the image of North Korea as a bizarre place.
It's inside the strange world of North Korea.
If you just believe one source and write based on that source, then it becomes a wild story. There are so many wild stories.
April 2012, a parade in Pyongyang, a display of the country's military power. However, arms experts studying the footage identify worn-out weaponry, outdated vehicles, and intercontinental ballistic missiles that look suspiciously like mock-ups made purely for show. But this kind of informed reporting on North Korea is the exception rather than the rule. In August last year, South Korean newspaper Chosun Ilbo reported that Kim Jong-un had had his ex-girlfriend shot for involvement in pornography. The UK's Telegraph, American website Salon, and even the Business Insider all reported the news. Just a month ago, the supposedly dead ex-girlfriend popped up on North Korean television. The reports of her demise had been greatly exaggerated. In March this year, BBC, Radio Free Asia, The Independent, and a number of other outlets posted the story about North Korean students being ordered to cut their hair like Kim Jong-un. There were no facts to back that up. When Jang Song-taek, the influential uncle of Kim Jong-un, was arrested last year, the pictures were broadcast on North Korean television for the world to see. Then, gruesome details began to make the rounds about how Jang was executed, supposedly devoured by hungry dogs. This news channel in India gave the story the Bollywood treatment. And NBC News in the US, the Daily Mail and the Independent in the UK, and Singapore's Straits Times all reported it. Sky News in the UK did something different. They just asked North Korea's ambassador to Britain about it.
But how was he executed? Because there has been, okay, some very wild reports that he might have been fed to the dogs.
No.
Can you clear it up? How was he executed? Was he shot?
Well, he was shot to death.
North Korea is a country of 25 million people, one of only 8 in the world with nuclear weapons. You would expect the reporting to be, if not 100% accurate, at least a little more serious.
North Korea, of course, invents its own history and its own myths. Then there are all sorts of people who have other reasons for doing it, not least, of course, the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese, various people who've worked for them. And most of it can never really be verified or not verified.
The Western media's perspective of North Korea is very negative. In addition, their knowledge of the country is shallow, and therefore the reports are inaccurate. Japanese media outlets report everything, but with their own political spin. South Korean news organizations are split between those who want to push favorably the image of North Korea and many others who want to highlight the negative aspects of the country.
북한 김정은의 뇌 구조는 어떻게 될까요?
North Korea would like to tell us that they have the strongest and best trained army in the world. There are reasons why the South Koreans would like us to think that that might be true, because, of course, you know, they would like to keep defense budgets flowing as well.
Pyongyang shows only what it wants to show, while we report events with our own biases. Hence, no media outlet can really be accurate about North Korea. This selective reporting of North Korea means it is impossible to get a balanced picture of the country.
There are numerous outlets that track events in North Korea and try to fact-check them. There's NK News, North Korea Leadership Watch, KCNA Watch, Daily NK, and a host of outfits in Seoul and Tokyo staffed by defectors from the Hermit Kingdom. But defectors often have an agenda.
I try to double-check, meet with government officials as well as intelligence sources. I meet with North Korean defectors, credible defectors. There are a lot of defectors. A lot of North Korean defectors are not really telling the truth, and all these South Korean media are writing stories based on their TV testimonies and their contributions.
If getting information out of North Korea is difficult, getting into the country is even tougher, which is why it was such a big deal when, back in February 2013, New York-based Vice Media filmed an entire episode of its TV series in Pyongyang.
Since our instincts are usually to shoot the exact opposite of what people want us to, I was more than a bit freaked out.
You have a friend for life.
Vice got in because it had a different idea. Vice knew Kim was a basketball fan, so it brought in a colorful ex-player, and the rest was TV history. But most media outlets aren't able to offer a sweet photo op that'll go global in exchange for access to North Korea. Instead, they go cap in hand to Pyongyang trying to get their journalists in, and the vast majority of them are turned down. That leaves reporters on the outside looking in, trying to figure out the story from a distance. And that is almost never a good formula for producing journalism that actually informs.
On an almost daily basis, I think the biggest mistake is with news editors who are impatient to get the story out. And so there's actually pressure put on correspondents to report. When journalists on the ground in the field don't feel they have enough to go on, their editors say, well, we're running with it anyway, slap together whatever you can. Because it's North Korea, and anything goes. And there is no way to double check a fact, so let's run with the fact that was put out today.
Firstly, I watch what North Korea puts out, and I pay particular attention to who is making the statements, whether it's the Foreign Ministry spokesman, the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea, or the Defense Ministry. Depending on who is speaking, you can assess what message Pyongyang is trying to deliver.
There's no mechanism to shame editors and media outlets who run with these stories. So no one had to put out a front page story saying, actually, we got it wrong. Jang Song-taek was not fed to the dogs. They just ignore it. You let it go. And you got a lot of attention. So all the incentives are to keep publishing falsehoods.
And in the swirl of stories about executions that never really happened, hairstyles that never got into fashion, and nuclear weapons that don't exist, real news gets lost.
Are we going to spend all our time chasing our tail, trying to work out where this story came from, whether it's real, whether it's disinformation? I don't think we should. We should try and work on what we can actually verify, which is largely around the economy, around the missiles program, and around any political intrigue that's going on that could end in a coup and a sudden collapse. Who cares what haircuts they've got if the country collapses?
More Global Village Voices now on fake stories from North Korea.
I'm very aware of impact of unconfirmed stories of North Korea. For example, this would be the hacking incident in South Korea last year. The NH Bank was crippled by unknown hacker groups, although there was no concrete evidence that North Korea was behind the attack. The South Korean government immediately placed the blame on the North. In particular, media would report the rumor as the factual story. This unclear coverage led to hate movement against the North Koreans.
I absolutely find that North Korea is very vulnerable to the fake story phenomenon. This is a place that no one knows anything about. Very little reliable information gets out of the place. So what little pieces we have to draw a lot of conclusions to fill in the blanks. Who knows whether there's any fact or not, but they self-propagate. We get to hear them probably 100,000th hand. They're fun to hear, they're fun to report on. I like reading them, and it just kind of adds to the sort of allure of North Korea.
Finally, why is it that people get to watch the Listening Post on their computer screens, but we don't get to watch you? That hardly sounds fair. Luckily for us, the NSA has an app for that. One of the things that Edward Snowden revealed about the National Security Agency is that its spies can hijack your webcam just to make sure you're behaving. Jack Vale is an American comedian who works online with hidden cameras. He NSA'd his friends and family, infiltrating their computers and creeping them out. Vale plays it for laughs, but the underlying message is serious. This is spooky stuff, very Big Brother. With nearly 500,000 hits online, NSA webcam spying prank is our web video of the week. We'll see you next time, so to speak, at the Listening Post.
Okay, we're live. Okay, we're in. She has no idea. We're hacked into her webcam. He's got his phone. Jack. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm home. Yeah, I'm in Idaho.
You got to try something different, man. Something like some kind of a brand name product for your lips.
What? Jack?
Stop biting your nails. Write this down. Do you have a pen or something?
Yeah, actually got one in my hand.
That flower's a pen, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. How did you know?
Know what?
That it was a flower pen. Are you here? Jack, how did you know I have a flower pen in my hand?
Have an itch.
Oh my gosh, Jack's
We're looking at the webcam.
How did you do that?
That is so creepy. How did you know how to do that?